Gergana, where is Gergana? Here is Gergana. Please, technically speaking, you have 10 minutes, but you know, we are 10 minutes in advance, so please. Thank you.
Okay. We're 10 minutes in advance, so you can take 10 if you want. Right. Maybe I can just quickly introduce myself. My name is Gergana Petrova. I work at RIPE NCC in the external relations team. I'm at RIPE NCC for about 5 years now. Today I'd like to talk to you about 3 projects that we have. So originally I wanted to talk to you about RACI, but I decided also to add some explanations about the RIPE Fellowship and also the Community Projects Fund. All right, first about RACI, what does the acronym stand for? It's the RIPE Academic Cooperation Initiative. This is something we started some 5 years ago with the aim to bring more academics to the RIPE meetings. Traditionally, there have been quite a lot of academics as a percentage of the attendees at the RIPE meetings, unsurprisingly, because the internet back in the day developed from academia. However, as the internet became more and more commercialized, for-profit companies could afford to send more representatives, while academia couldn't afford to send so many people in the same numbers. So even though the numbers of academics have been growing in absolute values, as percentage of the total attendees at the RIPE meetings, they have been declining. So we decided to create the RACI program in order to pay for the travel, the accommodation, and the meeting fee for academics to come and present their research at the RIPE meetings. And the aim was twofold. So on the one hand, we wanted to bring new ideas, new research to the attention of network operators, but also to give academics the chance to speak with practitioners and network operators to find out what problems they have in the real world and potentially do research on those. So where are the meetings? We organize regularly several meetings. You know about MINOG in the Middle East, the RIPE meeting in our service region, INOG in Eastern Europe, and ACI Southeast Europe. We sent 4 RACI people in Tehran, 8 in Marseille, 4 in Moscow, and guess how many in Timisoara? It's 0. Yes, so the reason that I'm having this presentation here mostly is to tell you, please help me spread the word. We receive very few applications from Southeast Europe, and I would really like this to change. So maybe you're not working at universities yourself, but maybe you have some contacts, some professors that can tell their students, or maybe you know somebody who works in a research institution, somebody who is doing something interesting that might be worth presenting at the next meeting or the RIPE meeting, whichever meeting, please tell them to apply. So which are the upcoming meetings? We have a regional meeting in September in Almaty in Kazakhstan, and the next RIPE meeting is taking place in Amsterdam in October. The application deadlines for both of these meetings is 12th of August, so there's plenty of time. Please reach out to your contacts. All they need to do is submit a short abstract and draft slides. The examples of relevant topics you can see on the screen behind me, it's basically anything that could be interesting for a RIPE meeting or SE meeting. Network measurement and analysis, V6 deployment, BGP routing, network security, internet governance, peering and interconnectivity, Internet of Things. If you know that somebody is working on something interesting, let them know and tell them to apply, and I will send them feedback if the topic can be tweaked or whatever. How to find out some more information? There is a lot on the ripe.net/RACI, the homepage of the initiative. We also have a mailing list where I send a lot of announcements, not only the call for presentations, but also other information that concerns academics. We also have a Twitter account and a LinkedIn group, so pick your choice. Now I want to tell you a little bit more about the RIPE Fellowship. So this is an initiative we started last year with the aim to help people from remote regions to attend the RIPE meeting. So we fund the travel, the hotel, and the meeting ticket. And so I'm going to basically ask myself a question, then answer it. What's the difference between the fellowship and RACI? So the fellowship is open to anybody. That could be academics, but that could also be people who are working in other organizations. Academics who are accepted for RACI are also expected to present their research. However, if there's an academic who does not have a research or is a student or so on, then the RIPE Fellowship is the better program to apply for. So basically, if you're an academic and you have research, it's best to apply for RACI because that increases your chances of getting selected. We get less applications there just because the criteria is harder. And if you don't fall into that category, then please do apply for the RIPE Fellowship because then we can still fund your travel and accommodation. The next call for applications is for the following RIPE meeting, so in Amsterdam, and it's going to open together when the registration for the meeting opens. So that's probably going to be sometime in July. And lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Community Projects Fund. So RIPE NCC has a long history of funding projects that are for the good of the internet. And last year we decided to formalize these efforts in order to make the distribution of these funds more transparent to the community. And this is how the Community Projects Fund was born. So we distribute 250,000 euros a year to different projects that are beneficial to the internet in our service region. A little bit to know about what the project criteria are. So as I mentioned, it must be of benefit to the internet and the RIPE community. It has to be non-commercial. There needs to be a clear project plan and also timeline. You can apply as many times as you want. However, the same project cannot be funded again in the same year. In a different year, it can be funded again subsequently. If you are wondering what type of projects we have approved in the past, please take a look at the link. Apologies that it's a little bit long. So in 2017, the first year when we ran this, we have approved 7 projects, and they're already in the process of assimilating the funds. All right, so the call for presentations is already open. The deadline for 2018 is in 10 days. So I would encourage you to apply if you have if you have a project in mind. We will announce the winning projects in September. And if you're not ready to apply in 10 days, but you are still thinking about something, maybe in the long term, keep an eye on our website for the projects that we approve, just to get a better idea of what we are searching for, and just to see how the process goes. So the progress reports are going to appear online as we collect them. So this is an ongoing process. And more information you can find on ripe.net/CPF, Community Projects Fund. So just a small disclaimer. RACI is the project that I coordinate. Amanda, my colleague Amanda from Communications, is coordinating the RIPE Fellowship, and my colleague Alistair is coordinating the Community Projects Fund. Of course, if you have any questions, you see my email on the slides. Ask me about any of these projects, and I can forward your email to the relevant colleague in the department. So that was it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, guys. Gergana is here to give you the money. Do you have any questions how to receive the money? No? Okay. Thank you, Gergana. It was very interesting. Well, now we have something outside of ITs and RIPE, it's ornithology, as I saw. Or Remco, can you explain what the birds have to do with RIPE?
So, after all these policies and the RIPE NCC throwing money at you, I'm going to talk about something else. We're going to talk about opera. No, we're not. A software project is not a software project until you give it a name. And given that this is about the bird BGP daemon and basically putting a fence around it, there's a character in Die Zauberflöte from Mozart called Papageno. And Papageno is a bird catcher. So there you go, bird. And specifically bird in the interdomain. Now I trust most of you have heard of the bird BGP software. If you haven't, here's the link. It is currently one of the best pieces of open source routing software. There is one caveat to it. The documentation of it is, even though technically 100% correct, unfortunately a little bit basic. And any advanced question you would ask even to the maintainers is basically, you can try looking it up in the source code. Now, I'm a little bit of a programmer, but not that much of a programmer, and I've certainly never been a good C programmer, so this is a bit of a challenge for me. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two, the interdomain, the internet as we call it, with more than 60,000 ASNs and 700,000 IPv4 routes and 50,000 IPv6 routes and hijacks and leaks and fat fingers all over the place. Just follow the BGP Stream Twitter account and you'll be inundated with networks that fall offline, prefixes that get hijacked. I think just today there's been like 6 or 7 prefix hijacks so far. So you have this open source piece of software and it does BGP and you want to use it to connect to the internet. Now you look at the documentation and it says something like this. Please don't do this, because this way you expose with the import all yourself to pretty much absolutely everything the internet throws at you, and you will believe it. That's not a good idea. Actually, if you're really serious about this stuff, you shouldn't be looking at that file at all. You should be writing some tooling around it so you never ever have to go into that configuration where having a single typo means that your whole forwarding engine comes to a stop. Even though you can run checks on it. Now this is more like it. This is actually a capture from a CSV file that I'm currently using to configure my routers. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on this yet, but so what I was aiming for is, I have this ASN and I want it connected to the internet, and I'm connected to a number of internet exchanges with route servers and direct peers and some transit and a bunch of other stuff. And I wanted this to run securely. I wanted this to be up to standards. I wanted this to be RFC compliant. And now there's a lovely RFC 7454 that gives operational best practices for BGP routers on the internet. And there's a whole bunch of very valuable stuff in there, like protecting your BGP sessions with MD5 and TTL and GTSM, ASN filtering. You shouldn't have paths that are too long. You shouldn't have bogons. You probably want to look at if what you're getting from a peer contains some transit ASN, because that is probably not what you're looking for unless you want to have some dubious quality free hijacks. You want to do prefix filtering. You certainly do not want anything that, according to IANA, shouldn't be on the internet. You don't want prefixes that are too long, prefixes that are too short. You don't want anyone to leak a default route to you. You also don't really want to learn about IXP prefixes from someone, and you also don't want any external party to tell you something about your own prefixes, because that's simply not good. What you do want to do is you want to look at IRR, you want to look at ASET, you want to potentially even do origin validation using RPKI, although that whole tool chain is a different animal that I'm not going to be covering today because I only have 10 minutes. Now, so what does Papageno do? It is a very simple set of bird configuration templates and scripts, and it tries to do all of the stuff on the previous slide. And it does that with some substantial integration into PeeringDB. And the really cool thing about this can automatically update your configs, not just your prefix sets, also your peering configuration. So to give you an example of a complete configuration on an IX for 2 separate peers with any number of sessions to any number of routers that those peers might have on the exchange. This is it. I have an IXP, so everything else that's underneath this line is connected to this IXP, and if I have another IXP, there's another line saying IXP, and then you go on. Then you have the name of the peer, which is Google, the PeeringDB network ID, which is 433, and the remote ASN, which is 15169. Hurricane 2916939. And what it does is this. It builds a piece of config that doesn't just set up the BGP peering configuration for bird. It also does same things like figuring out what AS set prefixes it needs to download and needs to configure and needs to filter against. It has standard templates for all the other stuff like bogons and Martians and everything else. Really what I'm trying to convey here, too long didn't read, is in my current configuration I have a 2 kilobyte CSV file which consists of 46 lines, which translates into 1.3 million lines and 30 megabytes of bird config. And it does that automatically, and it keeps it up to date automatically. So that's all nice. While I was doing all the PeeringDB integration, I figured, well, one of the typical things if you're looking at debugging networks is where the hell does this route come from in my network? So while I was at it, I added extensive tagging. So any route you accept gets tagged with where's the router that accepted this route, or which IX is it connected to? Did I get this route from a direct peer or a route server? That's actually very relevant to know because that's very hard to figure out further on in your network. It tags it with the ISO code of the country it learned it in. It tags it with the region it was in, and it does that with both regular and large communities. And in order to help with debugging, any rejected route, of course, doesn't get propagated to the rest of your network, but if you do want to figure out what's going on inside of your bird with all the filters, every filter reason will be tagged with a large community. So if the path is too long, there's a community for that. If the AS set doesn't match, there's a community for that. Bogons, Martians, everything that gets filtered gets tagged. So you can find out with every filtered route why did it get filtered. Here's another one. So some observation. Trust within limits. There's the PeeringDB. You can squeeze in certain ways, and out of it comes a full list of all the subnets in use by all the IXPs that are present in PeeringDB. Now that's very useful because you can automatically then use that list to say, well, if this matches, I don't want to see this route, I want to filter it. However, PeeringDB is a very trusting organization. That's what's in its standards. So you want to set some ranges for what you're going to accept. I'm not going to accept an exchange that's going to give themselves a /8 in PeeringDB. That's not a good idea. Another observation that I found out is the AS set that networks have in PeerNEB is actually a free-form field. So you cannot and should not rely on the fact that whatever is in there actually is an AS set. It could be a number of AS sets, or it could be some weird format, or it could be anything. So you want to check what that does. So further back to Papageno, right now it's in late beta, aka works for me. It's written in Perl and Bash. Yes, I'm old. I'm really old. This is actually the first presentation I've done on open source routing since I checked it, since 2002, Jesus. It's available on GitHub, and if you would like to have a poke around, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions, comments, happy to hear them. And that is it.
Thank you, Remco. Are there any questions, comments, suggestions? Huh?
Thank you. Was that a half question, Nishal, or were you just getting uncomfortable? Okay, that's good.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we will have a little bit longer lightning talk. Where is Razvan? Here. Here, okay. So Razvan asked if we can make his lightning talk a little bit longer because he has some useful information to share. And we are perfectly in time, so you just go and rock and roll. Thank you.
It's not going to be that long. Don't believe everything that Jan says. While talking to some of you, it became quite clear the discussion many times steers towards the RAI meeting and what is similar between the RAI meeting and this particular one. Just a sec. All right. Yeah, technology. So, I said then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the items that might be useful to some of you when you're organizing an NOG or when you're organizing another meeting, and to see, hey, what could be similar or what could be a lesson that you can learn from our experience. I'm doing RAI meeting technical coordination for, I think, 24 RAI meetings so far. Over 20 anyways. So, because the subject is so vast, I'm just going to talk about 4 things. And that is how you choose the team, or how we choose the team. How do we choose the venue? Then the most important thing without the meeting could not exist, and that's the electricity. And of course, the most important thing for your happiness, and that is the Wi-Fi. So let's talk about the team first. This is what people think of. You know, it's throwing numbers. If it doesn't work with 3, it will work better with 4. If not with 4, then with 40. And what people are looking for normally is to have the best specialist around, the most experienced people, and all of them should be thinking the same way. And that is, of course, terribly wrong. You don't get anywhere well with this. What you actually would like to have instead of this is this. Everybody should think a little bit different. You need a squad team in which everybody has a clear specialty. There is the Wi-Fi guy, there is the services guy, there are people that understand different aspects of technology, but they all have a certain base. And for us, when we're doing the technical coordination, we're looking at 3 things to find out whether the team is okay or not. And that is, first of all, the team is stable, so you have a small churn rate. You don't want people going in and out. Then you want them to be motivated, to be happy about what they're doing, meaningful work. And the third thing that you'd like for them is to be focused on the job, remove all the obstacles in what they need. And Google actually made a very nice study in 2015. It was called Project Aristotle. And Project Aristotle came with the name because the whole is more than just the sum of the parts. And if incidentally we just look to see, is this actually a match between what they're found from a team perspective to what we find from a coordination perspective? And I think it just matches. Our stability that we're looking for in Google's terms would be psychological safety. How safe are you to make a mistake and your team is not going to laugh about you? And dependability is that, hey, if your team member just said he's going to do something, can you forget about it? Is it going to really be done? And that is very much in line with the stability that we've been looking for. The motivation is the meaning of the job that you have and also the impact that you know that you're going to bring. And finally, the focus is the clarity of the job to be done and the structure. Who's responsible for what? And that, I think, these things, if you have them in mind, at least the ones on the left when you're choosing your team, then you realize whether, hey, is the good mix, is the good team or not? At least this is our experience. Now, in terms of venue, Martina is an expert in this. You know, it's asking all the time what the venue can do for us, squeezing the last bits of possibilities out of a venue, right? In our case, in the technical thing, it's not what the venue can do for us, what we can do to the venue and still get away with it, you know? Oh, sorry about that. Let me just, sorry. Okay, I pressed the wrong button. It happens. First of all is, can we go down deep into the basement and access all the patch rooms and all cables and everything that we need? You know, those humid, dark spots under every hotel. Now, that's an actual hotel basement. Then we need that. Perhaps we need to go up on the roof, right? We used to have GPS antenna for many years for our TTM service, and that meant we need to install antennas on every single roof, sometimes even on the exterior of the building, and we had to get away with it, right? Every single time we need to make a cable mess. Can we do that and get away with it? That's a standard dry meeting setup. Can we hang things? Tape things? Right? We've been in scouting hotels where we had to ask the question, can we tape this? Oh, no, this is a 100,000 euro table from the 1800s, it's a Ludovic, I don't know. Well, that won't work, right, for us. And even when you think you exhausted all the questions, is there anything else we should consider? Any other question we should ask? Well, who knows? Is it raining in the basement? Is it raining in the computer room? And that's actually, everybody knows who's been in Marseille, that's actually what happened over there. It was water infiltration in the computer room. Now, electrical power. Without it, there will be no meeting, right? So how do you estimate the necessary consumption of the electrical power, and how do you make sure there are no accidents, right? Well, for once, you know that if you're going to need more than whatever a 16 amp power socket is going to give you, you need to ask the hotel for a 3-phase, 32 amp, 64 amp, and ask them to split it into single phases. But also, how much do you need? What we have, what we use for some years, is we call it the rule of 75%. And it's pretty simple. It's totally non-scientific, but it just kind of works for us. And it says that if you have a room of, say, 200 people, and you have a laptop charger that is rated at 80 watts, which is 13-inch and 15-inch laptops, probably you're going to get that average, well, you just calculate 75% of the people are going to use a laptop at every single time. Out of those, 75% of those laptops are going to be charging at every single time at 75% of their maximum power rating. And then you make a back-of-envelope calculation. And sometimes you just need to go around and say, hey, is it still 75, or is it 70, or is it 60? Nowadays, some people's laptops hold charge for much longer than before, but still, this gives you enough space, even if some people have, I don't know, other devices with them, but nobody's going to bring heat radiators, right? So even if they have other devices with them, this would be pretty much enough so you don't have blowing up fuses and stuff. Right? Now, the Wi-Fi. With the Wi-Fi, all you have to keep in mind is that for rooms bigger, let's say, starting with this room but bigger, 200 people, 150 people, what you need is high density deployment, right? And with high density deployment means that, at least in our case, we're using more access points. You could hang access points high up at your eye level or down on the floor. What do you think? What would be the best? High up on the ceiling, eye level, or down on the floor? Floor. Any other? On the table. Okay, that's all right. So, first of all, I want to tell you now there are 2.4 gigahertz band, and then there is the 5 gigahertz band. Now, this is what a very nice, off-the-book 2.5 gigahertz band looks like. You have 3 non-overlapping bands, and they're textbook. And this is actually 5 years ago in one of the RAI meetings. See, you can use either 1 or 2 or 3, and in between there is a clear separation. But that, it's fable. That used to be 5 years ago. This is what it looks now. This is what is the reality. So the 2.4 gigahertz is almost unusable in a high density scenario, no matter what you do. The only solution to that is to use the attendees. Our bodies, which are fantastic bags of water in what the 2.4 gigahertz is concerned, it absorbs these radiations. So if you're putting enough access points at a very low power on the floor, then the 2.4 is not going to get very far. It's going to be 1, 2, 3 chairs. So you, the attendees, provide the isolation necessary for this. And that makes it work. This means that you can actually use the 2.4 gigahertz as well in a high density scenario. At least this is our experience. This is actually what we had in RAI 76 auditorium. You can count them, there are over 22 access points in there. How do you put them? Well, historically we put them underneath the chairs when we still used Cisco's, right? And then, yes, low power, maximum 2.4 gigahertz attenuation. But you can also use, I don't know, custom mounts. I think that underneath this aero hive, there are like some 2 rolls of tape or something like that. And that was simply because these aero hives ran so hot, they could actually leave a burn mark on the carpet. So then you raise them a bit and you make some mounts, right? All right, so I think that was what I want to talk to you about. I'm going to happily take any questions, and of course, if you still have more questions about how we do things and how we can share some information about your meetings and how we can help you with the information, or at least from our own experience, I'll be happy to hear them.
Okay, any questions for Razvan? You don't want to organize any meeting? Okay.
Well, I have a comment and a question. I guess the comment is first, obviously we work together a lot, and
Yes.
Setting up the meetings, I rely on you guys, but I have to say, I think setting up a Wi-Fi to any other event would probably be difficult, but you guys have to set up a Wi-Fi for engineers, and that must be one of the most difficult tasks on earth. So I think you do a fantastic job, and to be able to take all the criticism. I thought you might talk about a couple of stories of the cleaning ladies pulling switches out of switches and these sort of things, or pulling the power out. But other than that, is there any? You've been doing it for such a long time. Is there any tips that you think you've learned over the few years, that the 1 or 2 tips you might give somebody who's starting out in this?
There will be if you're going to do high density scenario, if you're using what I outlined here in terms of how to calculate power, how to deploy the access points, team venue, you're pretty much fine. There are many miscellaneous other things that we're doing, other services over there, and how to deploy the network, the switches, we're making the ring internal. It's just that depends on the size of your meeting, and it depends really what you're looking for. But on these things, the 4 topics that I mentioned here, the team, the venue, the Wi-Fi, and the power, everybody is going to just hit something.
Yeah.
So just follow this. If you have other ideas, share them with us. But at least through iteration of every single RAI meeting going forward, this is what we learn actually works, and works regardless of the size of your meeting.
Yeah, brilliant. I love your emphasis on the team. I fully support it, but thanks for sharing it, Raz. Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi there, Nishal Govardhan, curious person. I have a question about the Wi-Fi.
Sure.
So I agree with you, human bags of water make great attenuators. We've been doing this for a long time as well. How do you measure Wi-Fi in the room? How do you measure the quality of the Wi-Fi? Now you can obviously rely on
that's a very nice question.
You can rely on the complaints that you're getting. Some people saying this doesn't work, that doesn't work.
That would be pretty reactive, wouldn't it?
And you obviously know that 5 gigahertz is, well, it used to be easier, nice and clean, but do you at your larger meetings, because I've never been to a RIPE meeting, do you have active probes or something?
All right, so first you should come to a RIPE meeting, definitely, you're invited. But there are 2 answers to your question. First of all would be on the 5 gigahertz. It's not as it used to be. Well, nothing is what it used to be, but still it's very usable, especially in the meeting rooms. There aren't too many, in our experience, we're using a Wi-Fi device that actually maps the frequencies around the meeting rooms. It never been that bad as unusable, no. 2.4, as I showed you, that is unusable nowadays, if you don't do anything about it. In terms of how do we measure, yes, it does happen that we're having some issues and then people are going to come and tell us. But most of the time, that would be reactive. Proactive approach that we're using is to measure it constantly. And there are several ways to measure the Wi-Fi, and I'll be happy to discuss together with you after this. But newer access points that we're having, the Ubiquiti's UHD, have an extra radio that can help monitor the spectrum continuously. And we're having several of those. In a regular access point, if you do not have something with SHD, what you can use is to flip it around. If you have enough of them, you can miss one, right? So then remotely, just flip it so that it's going to act as a monitoring device instead of giving internet to people. If your deployment is correct, nobody will feel that, and then you can get information, right? Then you can use other devices. You can use Raspberry Pis, right? You can use Raspberry Pis put strategically in some places. There's so many other ways in which you can monitor, but do it in a way that you're going to get feedback from your monitoring device before people start saying that, hey, the internet is not working here and there. Still, you're going to miss some cases, but most of them you're going to catch early on. Does this answer your question?
Well, I was actually curious what you use. I know how to measure, but I'll take that with you offline.
Fantastic.
Razvan, in all these years, the craziest funny story that happened to you, and you learned from it.
Sure. There are many. It's difficult to choose, but I know that the hardest thing for the team was in Istanbul when the power went and did not come back. I mean the hotel power entirely, and that was difficult. Then I remember another one. Let's not put names onto locations. Another one which I was a member of the team was when the internet, our connectivity provider, we had problems setting up the BGP connections, and it was James Aldridge, my colleague, trying to set it up late night at 2 a.m. and it was a Sunday, and the Monday the meeting was starting. And those were moments which you said, what we are going to do. And then we had team members who fallen sick, and we had to just find a way to replace them on the spot. But none of these are funny when they happen. They're simply tragic back then. The one in Marseille we just had, in which one of the two servers just simply died because it rained on it. Well, that wasn't funny either. So, but yes, after the fact, when everything turns okay, you know, all the RIDE meetings, this meeting as well, SE, and all those that you guys are organizing, are the same way. You go to different places, and you hardly know what you're going to find. So the input is highly variable, right? It goes into a black box, which is you organizing the meeting, and then on the other hand has to come out constant. The same thing every single time. People expect, the attendees expect the best from you, and they expect it the same every single time, regardless of what you had when you put it in. It's the same service, the same quality, and that is a challenging but highly rewarding thing to have every single time.
Any more questions? Razvan, thank you. So one tip from my side, don't choose the venue